So I tried this and I tried that.
You see there's little arrows down here, so let's try this. Now try.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go with this and hopefully not touch anything else that'll make it disappear. So I'm actually kind of curious how many people are even familiar with the LBJ National Grasslands. And this is not the Wildflower Center in Austin. This is in Decatur. So there's a few people. They're actually a very unknown entity, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about them. It is federally owned acreage. It's not private or a state park or anything. It's federally owned. It's actually managed. It was established back in the 1930s as a response, and there's not just one. There's grasslands all over the continental US. Any place where there was a lot of ecological devastation during the Dust Bowl. And that was the impetus behind establishing it. The federal government came into places that were really hard hit, ag places that were really hard hit by the Dust Bowl. And they created these jurisdictional boundaries, which I'll show you a map of here in a minute. They created these jurisdictional boundaries, and then they started trying to acquire property within this boundary. And so what you see when you go out to the grasslands is they did not acquire every acre that was inside this boundary. It's really an interesting patchwork of privately owned and publicly owned land. And another interesting thing about it, people assume if it's federal and it's kind of like an open space, it's managed by the Department of the Interior, like a national park, but it's not. It's actually managed by the Department of Agriculture, because part of the thought was, let's figure out how to make these marginal or really destroyed lands productive again. So they tried a lot of experiments. They tried planting pine plantations. They built a lot of little lakes to stem the erosion, because there's just some gigantic erosion ravines out there from when everything was blowing away and washing away. And the other interesting thing about it, because it's not managed by the Interior Department, because it's managed by Ag, it has a different mandate as far as usage. It's not just for open space. It's not just for like wildlife habitat. There's agricultural, there's grazing leases, there's cows and horses out there. It's also recreational for hunting. Everything you can hunt in the state of Texas can be hunted on the grasslands, and you have to be self-aware of when those hunting seasons are and dress appropriately or not go out there during hunting season. And they also have oil and gas, mineral extraction going on out there. So it's a pretty different landscape, but yet, since it's been set aside for 80 some years, there's actually some wonderful open space, natural resources, wildlife habitat out there. And that's what I wanted to highlight in this program, some of the really unusual wildflowers you can find out there now, because it's been wrested from, and it's really been well managed by the USDA, NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. It's been really well managed by the federal employees. So this is where it's located. This is ecoregion map of Texas, and I know it's very tiny, and I'm sorry about that. When I put this together during Zoom meetings on pandemic, everybody has a big screen on their, on their desk, so they can see this a lot better. But that big black dot, that is Wise County, and that is where the grasslands are located. It falls within a brown patch, which is called the Cross Timbers and Prairies ecoregion. And it's kind of deceptive that it looks like it's kind of a large homogeneous area, but the Cross Timbers and Prairies is actually one of the most diverse set of landscapes, but they're all very small. So they all got lumped together in this one big brown patch. But there's actually 4 distinct ecoregions, like sub-ecoregions within that Cross Timbers and Prairies. There's the Blackline Prairie, Eastern Cross Timbers, Fort Worth Prairie, or sometimes called Grand Prairie, or the Lampasas, or limestone cut plain. And then there's the Western Cross Timbers. So this is a drawing of roughly the northern part of that brown area. And I know I'm not expecting anybody to be able to read this, but in this drawing, the light area to the right is Blackland Prairie, and then there's a strip of Eastern Cross Timbers, which is a post oak savanna. And then in the center, another light strip, that's the Fort Worth Prairie. And then that kind of mottledy green and white off to the left, that's an ecotone area of prairie and Western Cross Timbers. And so the LBJ Grasslands fall inside that ecotone area of prairie merging in with post oak woodlands. So here's the map of the grasslands. It's essential to have one if you're going to go out there, or download it or buy it from the Forest Service, because you never know whether you're on private property or a driveway that's private or a driveway that's part of the Forest Service. So those green blocks, those are all the patches that the Forest Service manages. And then and Decatur proper, the city of Decatur, is off this map to the south on the bottom. So this is north and west of the city of Decatur. So what does the greater landscape look like when you're out there? So what's happened is, over the many millennia of erosion, all these layers that were laid down when Texas was all under the Gulf of Mexico or the ancestral inland seaway, there's limestone layers laid down when it was a deeper marine environment full of oysters and other types of shellfish. And then when the water receded, or when the land rose, you had more sand, like from rivers and estuaries. So you've got these interlaced layers of limestone and sand, and the plant community on the limestone is fairly different, because the limestone is very alkaline. The sandstone is somewhat acidic, so you get a different plant community. So in this particular picture, that hill in the background, that is a limestone knob, and it's got a really different plant community on top of it than the lower areas, which are in the sandy cross timbers area. So I started going out there to help Mary Curry. She's actually a contractor for the Forest Service, and they actually hired her to do surveys at the grasslands to spot unusual flowers and plants and things that they may want to take into consideration when they're doing management plans. So this is a typical crew of us out on the grasslands looking for perhaps something specific, or sometimes it was just looking to see what was flowering and creating a phenology or a calendar of when things are blooming. So the first thing we really started looking for, and the reason they hired Mary in the first place, was this really uncommon morning glory. This is a native morning glory, the narrow leaf morning glory. You can see from the flower, it looks just like, and it's the size of a horticultural garden morning glory, but it's really uncommon. It's only known from about a handful of sites in Texas. Now it's more common in other states like Oklahoma, but in Texas, it's really not very common. And so we were going all along roadsides and looking for evidence of this type of morning glory. And actually, when we started out, the Forest Service only knew of 9 locations in the whole of the grasslands for this wildflower. And now we're up to about 400 locations for this wildflower. So fortunately, it's not as rare as they thought on the grasslands. And the other thing they were concerned about is they do a lot of prescribed burning there to manage the vegetation, and they were afraid that this might be sensitive to burning, but it's turned out that there was a wildfire there that burned an area where they knew that there was morning glories, and the morning glories came back fine. So they did learn that they don't have to worry about prescribed burning in areas where they've got this. So for me, this is my favorite wildflower, the Trout-Lily or the white Fawn-Lily. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. A lot of the really unusual or uncommon things have a very ephemeral bloom period. You may only see them for a few weeks a year. They don't have these long, protracted flowering seasons like Prairie verbena. The trout lilies only flower for about 2 or 3 weeks, and it's usually in the late winter. It used to be that you would find them around Valentine's Day, but now they, possibly because of warming, they've started flowering later, and almost a month later this year than Valentine's Day. So in fact, we just went out there a couple of days ago and found some still flowering. So that's really unusual. They're called trout lilies because the foliage is kind of a speckled green and purple. It looks kind of like a rainbow trout. And then fawn lily for the same reason, because they're speckled like a fawn. They take about 7 years to flower from seed. And the bulbs are about 6 or 7 inches down in the ground. And when they won't flower until they grow a second leaf. So we find a lot of them with just 1 leaf, but you never find a flower unless it's got 2 leaves. So this is another wonderful spring ephemeral. This funnel lilies only last again for about 2 or 3 weeks in the early spring. These are really easy to miss. You can find the trout lilies pretty easy because the foliage is pretty distinct. But blue funnel lilies, the foliage, I don't know if you can see from the photos, the foliage looks like a sedge or like a very narrow grass blade. So it's really hard to spot them unless you catch them right when they're flowering. And each flower only lasts a day. So one, like this one on the left, that's got 4 flowers. So at least, it'll have a little bit longer flowering cycle than a day. And they'll put up flowers. They'll continue to put up a flower or 2. It's not all at one time, but yes, so you really have to be out there at the right time and find them. Wild hyacinths, these are really fantastic, and they're a little easier to spot. The thing about things like the trout lilies and the blue funnel lilies, these are very short. We're down on our hands and knees looking for these. These are not ones that you just like notice, oh, there it is. You have to really get down and move the grass around and crawl around some. But wild hyacinths, they get up tall. They get about 1 foot tall, and they have the most delicious smell. Horticultural hyacinths have nothing on them. They smell really wonderful. They also have very grass-like foliage, so they're difficult to spot until they're actually flowering. But because they have these flower heads with multiple flowers on them, they have a pretty long bloom cycle because the lower flowers will start to open as the buds are still forming on the top. So it'll last longer than the lilies. This is a really cool plant. It's more of a Midwestern plant, and that's another thing about the grasslands. It's far enough north and it's far enough west that you start getting really interesting plants that you normally would find more in the upper Great Plains, like in Oklahoma and Kansas, and some really different things than even what you find in Fort Worth, which is takes me about an hour from where I live in Fort Worth to get to the grasslands. So American Bluehearts, really uncommon out there. We know of about 3 places where you can find them pretty reliably. And they get very tall. They get probably 2 or 3 feet tall. And so they're easy to spot when they're blooming. And they usually seem to like little hillside seeps. So they like a little extra water, probably, to encourage them to stay there, sort of like bluebells do. So I'm kind of on a blue theme here. Oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. They're kind of arranged chronologically for the most part. So we started really early with like the trout lilies and the morning glory, and they're like late winter, and we're slowly moving. And some of these actually will rebloom, depending on like this blue mud-plantain, for instance. It's a wetland plant. So it likes to, we find it growing in puddles in little like tire ruts and around the edge of some of those ponds that were constructed by the Soil Conservation Service. Really pretty little, and again, very small. You can see in the right-hand picture, those are my fingers, and I'm down on my knees taking a picture of the mud-plantain. The really thin foliage around it, that's a type of spike rush. And and the other thing for me, at least, I don't see blue. It doesn't stand out to me very well. I mean, I can see the color blue, but it doesn't catch my eye like yellow or white or even red does. And so a lot of times I think I overlook these because the blue color doesn't catch my eye. This was a really cool find. We were crossing a little bridge or a culvert over where it connected two wetland areas. And some of y'all who are maybe more knowledgeable about local wildflowers are familiar with a wildflower called Prairie Bishop. It looks like lace, like white lace on the ground, but it's very short. It's only about 6 or 7 inches tall. Well, we were going over this culvert, and there was this stuff that looked just like Prairie Bishop, except it was about 1.5 feet tall. And I was like, what is that? And none of us actually, even Mary, who is the queen, she didn't know what it was. So we got out our field guides and we got online, and we figured out it was a close relative. It's in the carrot family of Prairie Bishop. It's called tansy dogshade. None of us had ever heard of it before, and it was growing in this wetland, like right in the water. So it's a wetland plant, and we've not seen it again out there. It must just like very specific conditions. So that was really exciting to find something brand new. This is a beautiful pea flower. It has a very close cousin called butterfly pea. This is spoon flower. You can see it's got compound leaves with 3 leaflets. It's a vine. So we found this growing up beside a fence, actually kind of coiling up on some of the tall grass and growing up on the barbed wire of the fence. And again, really get excited when we see something like this, because I just love them. They love deep sand. So we were on a part of the grasslands and the cross timbers where there was a lot of sand, and you start getting to recognize the soil type just by what's growing on it. Like, for example, the trout lilies like to grow on limestone-based soil, but obviously the soil has to be a little deeper because the bulbs have to go down by 6 or 7 inches. But they love growing around red oaks, and I usually find them growing around like red oak litter, and I have no idea if there's some association there, but it could very well be. And then like the spoonflower, and butterfly peas the same way, you only find it growing where there's deep sand. This is a really great plant. Of course, I love all these, so I'm gonna be saying that probably every time I get a new picture, but this is Texas Stillingia. It's also called Queen's Delight. It has, if you're familiar with the local prairies, there's a shorter one, there's a smaller one that's called Texas Queen's Delight, Prairie Queen's Delight. It's much shorter than this one. This one's very tall. It's about 2 feet tall. It was growing, you can see all the little blue stem around it. It was growing in a western cross timber savanna patch that the Forest Service had burned the previous year. So it was really nice and in a dappled shade environment. It doesn't get any showier flowering than this. The flower on the left is the flower head. It's these greenish yellow flowers on a spike. And this is in the same family as poinsettia. This is a spurge. let me think if there's anything else about it, except we were excited to see it. There was a big colony of it there too. So Penstemon, I know a lot of people grow garden Penstemon. We have a wonderful, huge Penstemon in our prairies here, false foxglove. This is loose flowered Penstemon. It likes sand. This was not growing very far from that Texas Stillingia. So it's small. Say these plants were about 8 or 9 inches tall, and you can see the flowers are only about this big. They're small, maybe a couple of inches long. In the background, in the left-hand photo, those white globs are Marshallia Barbara's buttons, the wild Barbara's buttons, and they like damp places. So I'm guessing that this loose-flowered Penstemon likes a little bit of extra water too, but I only have ever seen this growing again in sand. I don't see this growing in limestone soil. So here's another morning glory relative. And this is one that likes limestone. And this is one that's also very tiny. This is a hands and knees flower. The other thing about it is you can see from the left-hand photo, the flowers don't come out on the tip. The flowers are way down in the axillary leaves. They're not on the terminal ends of the stems. They're down in the axils. And so not only do you not see them from the top, you have to really get down and find the flowers around about midway down. It's called shaggy because, like a lot of plants that grow in kind of harsh environments, the leaves have a lot of hairs on them, silky hairs that help dissipate heat, and they help insulate the plant from sun overexposure. These grow on areas that are called barrens. They're limestone kind of bald areas where there's almost no soil, and the vegetation is very patchy up there. And so these kinds of plants are not very common because those bald areas are not very common. And it's very, very hot up there because it's pure prairie and there's no shade. This is another great plant. It's also in the pea family, and it's very uncommon as well. Hall's dahlia. This is a very tiny flower. That whole flower head is probably less than an inch. If you're familiar with prairie clovers, they have compound leaves with a number of leaflets on them. The compound leaves, because it's such a small plant, the compound leaves there's not very many leaflets, maybe 3 to 5 leaflets on these. They grow also in limestone, like barrens areas, and being yellow, they're a little easier to spot, but a lot of times, like in this picture, they're down at the base. That's little blue stem grass there, and they're down around the base of the plants. So they get a little bit of shade. If you think about the prairie, even the prairie has an understory. So the tall grasses are the tall trees, and then you've got things that still need shade. They're down in the understory of the grass instead of being in the understory of a tree. So this is in the carnation family. It's one of the few plants I'm aware of that are in the carnation family, native wild growing plants in our area. This again is another inhabitant of the barrens. These flower in the fall, late summer to fall. And Whitlow-wort, when things have the word wort in them, W-O-R-T, it's an old term for something that had medicinal value. And so whitlow is an old name for nail fungus. So apparently, at least, I don't know if there's any efficacy to it, but apparently it was believed that you could make a tincture or a poultice or something out of this plant and apply it to fungal infected nails, and it would help take care of the fungus. So We don't do that to Whitlow-wort now. We enjoy the beautiful yellow flowers, and these you can see they make this kind of a platter of flowers, but again, they're small. They're probably just like low calf in height. But when you're up there on the barrens, there's not much of anything else taller than this. So the last flower in my presentation is another one of my very favorite wildflowers. It also blooms in the summer, and it's also very uncommon, and so people don't often get a chance to see it because not many people want to go prairie hiking in June and July, which is when this flowers. But white rosin weed is in the aster family. It has a tremendous root system, probably 15 feet into the ground. It grows on barrens areas. So it finds cracks in the limestone, so it can send down these incredible roots. I've tried many times to transplant this from areas that were being developed, and you can't get enough of the root because the roots are down so far in the ground through all that limestone. So I'm very grateful that the grasslands are conserving a good population of these. They grow in some of the places that are most desirable for building up on these limestone ridges where very stable soil up there, nice views up there. So people want to build up there. So the grasslands is conserving a lot of this type of habitat. One interesting thing about rosinweed, or that Silphium, the genus Silphium, is that in the sunflower family, you've got two sets of actual flowers. The whole thing you see is a composite of a huge number of small flowers. So the central part's called the disc, and the petals are not petals, they're ray flowers. And so each one of those central disc flowers and the ray flowers have the potential for creating a single seed, which looks like a tiny little sunflower seed. And in some species, only the disc is fertile. In some species, only the ray flowers are fertile. And in some species, they both are. Well, Silphiums, only the ray flowers have the female parts. The central disc has pollen, but it doesn't produce any seeds. Only the ray flowers around the outside. So if you're wanting to grow this from seed, which I have, and with mixed success, but if you're wanting to grow this from seed, you have to know where to look for your actual seeds, which is they look like flat pieces of paper around the edge of the cup or the receptacle that holds the rest of the flower together. So that's the last flower in the presentation, and I did want to put in a plug. If you'd like to go on a prairie walk with me, I'm one of the several guides for the Native Plants and Prairies Day, which is happening at White Rock Lake on Saturday, May 7th. And Janet Smith could tell you all about it because she's who enlisted me to do it. And there's my email address and my phone number. And if you have any questions or you think of something later, you're welcome to email me or text me or call me. Yes, ma'am.
If we were to visit LBJ Grasslands, is there like a great intro to LBJ area that you would suggest? Is it all sort of thing?
No, it's not all sort of the same. The first time out there without someone who knows where the different units are can be a little daunting just because they're not really very well marked. There's not like a big sign at the front of each unit that says part of the LBJ Grasslands or anything. Some of them have unit numbers on them. A lot of them don't. I would. They don't have, I don't know if they have they have a lot of horseback riding out there. So they have something called TADRA. And I can't remember what that actual acronym stands for, but they have a lot of horseback riding, and it's so they're multi-use trails, but I don't recall seeing bikes out there. I don't know that, maybe the bike riders haven't found it, or maybe they're actually not allowed. I'm not sure about that, but I'd be very surprised if they weren't allowed because it's use everything out there.
So there are hiking trails.
You might encounter a horse while you're on the hiking trail, and a lot of the trails are roads, just road access. There's no restriction. You can wander anywhere you want. You don't have to stay on a road, but I would if you're not familiar with the area, because it's pretty easy to get lost. Some of the units, like some of those units have like thousands of acres. You know, the biggest one I think is 3,500 acres, something like that. So they're big. Some of them are big. Yes.
When you spoke about the white flower that's of the carrot family.
Yes.
There's an invasive one called Queen Anne's lace that's also part of the same family.
Yes.
Is this one that you showed in the picture a native?
It is native, yes. It is. It looks pretty different. She was asking if you couldn't hear about Queen Anne's lace is an invasive wildflower that's in the carrot family. Like, let me see if I can get back to it real quick. I don't know how far back it was. There, okay. So Queen Anne's lace, you can see on these pictures, I hope you can see that the flower heads are kind of loosely open. And the foliage looks like dill. Where Queen Anne's lace, it looks more like carrot, and the flower head is more tightly, it's not really like compact in a ball, but the flowers are all held together and it's very stiff. This was very loose and the foliage is like dill. So it really looks like the carrot family to me, that part of it with the dill foliage, because that's what Prairie Bishop has too. Did you? Yes.
How your trailheads out in the grasslands where you can like park?
Yes. There's places you can park, probably Unit 71. If you find a map online or order a map from the Forest Service, I think they cost like $14 or $15, and they're really nice maps. They're printed on that kind of paper that it's coated, or you can take it out, it can get wet, nothing will happen to it. I've had my map now for nearly a decade and it looks brand new. So Unit 71 is a good starter unit because it's the closest unit probably to Decatur. So I would start there, and it's got a big parking area and it's really pretty. You start out up on a ridge and you can see way off to the west from this ridge. And I've seen lots of raptors out there. And they seem to like to ride the current, lots of harriers, and then you can go down the hill. And so when you start at the top, that's another good thing about 71 is when you start at the top, you're in Prairie, limestone Prairie. And when you go down the hill, you get into cross timbers. So you see two different, because the limestone is younger than the western cross timber sand. So where it's eroded off, you're down into sand. Yes, ma'am. Well, they're protected on the grasslands. From that standpoint, it's like a national park. You're not supposed to go out and dig, and there are some. I don't know, y'all. Some of y'all may be familiar with the iNaturalist program, and we don't do much iNaturalist out there, because especially for things that are uncommon, because we don't want people to know where they are, because we are afraid that they might get poached. Especially things like the Trout-Lilies and some of the other, like those morning glories. We don't really want people to come dig them up because they're trying to protect them at the grasslands. Yes, ma'am.
Is there an interest or effort to collect seed?
Yeah.
Not from anybody, but just from more.
I have not, they don't, okay, her question was, is anybody trying to collect seed out there? To my knowledge, no, they don't seem to have any kind of a increase program where they're actually trying to grow plants to plant out there. I mean, I know that they don't have greenhouses or any kind of facility like that, so I don't think there's any seed collection going on from that standpoint that I'm aware of. So any other questions? Thank you very much.
Dorothy, while you're making the change, is it all right if I just go on with some of the announcements? Okay, so don't forget about the Bring Your Own Shovel sale at Geneva Heights this Saturday. It's located at 2911 Del Mar Avenue in East Dallas. The prices for the rescued plants are $5 for 1 gallon, $10 for 2 gallon, $20 for 5 gallon. They also have some garden tools and they accept cash only. So they would love to see you between 9 and 3 p.m. on Saturday. If you are one of the 100 people who have not turned in your background check and volunteer agreement, Chief Thompson would love to see you today. He has some blank ones, and that way y'all can take care of it and feel very virtuous for the rest of it. Okay, so a huge shout out to Jeff Raska and the amazing team at Urban County Farm. Oh, there we are. Awesome. Leading a diverse group of master gardeners and various community volunteers to successfully complete over 800 square feet of additional raised beds at their big build, which was on March 5th. The funds for this project came from a grant from Ecolab and the donation of soil from the American Conservation Coalition. With these additional beds, the team hopes to double their food production, which goes to feed underserved populations here in Dallas County. And I'd like to give another shout out to the newest members of our group, the Master Gardener class of 2022. We have a couple of them here, and I know they would just love to stand and be recognized. Juliana and Dina. They have wasted no time jumping in to help many of the Master Gardener projects, including the Rebuild, Lakewood Elementary, Texas Discovery Garden, Temple Emmanuel, and more. Yes. So now we will, and there's some of them at Lakewood. So anyway, they really just dived in and we're very excited about that. For the project spotlight of this month, we have Keast Memorial Park. And the project leaders are Carol Rabarsky and Barbara Harvey. I believe Barbara's going to be telling us more about Keast Memorial Park. Barbara, would you come forward?
The Master Gardeners of Dallas County have been involved with the Friends of Oak Cliff Parks since 2007. This was brought on by two Master Gardeners who lived in Oak Cliff, Ron Blanc and my mind just went, Francis Gonzalez, thank you. This is terrible. Anyway, they're the ones that suggested that this would be a good way for Master Gardeners to be involved in the community. And we started first at Keast Memorial Park. Keast, it's really Keast Memorial Garden. That is a picture that shows the sign. This was a gift from Edward Keast, who was at that time editor of the Times Herald and also a founder of the city radio WRR. If you change this is the pergola. This garden received a wonderful award from the state of Texas recently. This is a Lone Star Legacy Park, and this is really quite important. This pergola disappeared when funding for the park department was cut, when the financial situation in the city became very dire in the 80s. This 24-pillar pergola literally fell down and disappeared. We never have found out what happened to all the stones. In 2006, the Friends of Oak Cliff Parks begged two of our city council people, Ed Oakley and Elbert Garcia, to put funding to rebuild this pergola. And I have to say, Hindenburger Construction Company did a fabulous job. That was a WPA structure, so it had been there since 1934. This is the frog fountain and the reel in better days. But right now, the Friends of Oak Cliff Parks are trying to raise money to reconstruct this historic WPA reel. We need to raise $100,000, and the city of, we're hoping that the park department will match this amount of money. We in total need $297,000 to totally reconstruct this water feature. This is a 300-foot-long water feature. There are only two in the state of Texas. One is at Keith's Memorial Garden, and the other one is at the Botanical Garden in Fort Worth. I don't know if you realize how many WPA structures we have in Oak Cliff, but this is really a treasure house for people that like historic things, and Keith's Memorial Garden is really a treasure house of this. Can I have the next one? Yeah, here shows the reel as it looks today. It's closed down. We were told that we had to have a hydraulic specialist come in and tell us what was wrong. The Friends of Oak Cliff Parks got a $15,000 grant from the Kane Foundation in 2006, and we spent that to get the reel to work, but it didn't last very long, and now it is totally closed down, which is too bad. Now, I don't know if you all are aware of the fact that we had rose gardens at Keith's Memorial Garden for years. Rose Rosette attacked those gardens, and along with our tears, we had to wipe away what was left, and we started planting different things. Right now, we have Rose of Sharon demonstration garden, and we have just planted Shenandoah switchgrass and two of the other beds that were rose beds. We also have 4 registered monarch butterfly way stations in this park, full of butterfly plants that are attractive to butterflies, bees, and other insects that are necessary. So that might be something for you to come and visit when you come and do an on-site. We'd love to have you come with us and show you the park. That right there is a cestrum. Is that the, no, that's the alpha bed. Yeah, we have alpha beds and we have cestrum beds in addition to the beds with the Shenandoah switchgrass. This is a labor of love, and I have to tell you, we have been very fortunate for the 2 years of the COVID shutdown. We have been very, very lucky to have volunteers. Mormon missionaries have come and worked every week on Wednesday in this or other of the 4 parks with the Friends of Oak Cliff Parks and the Dallas County Master Gardeners share in the Oak Cliff Parks projects. They have literally saved our bacon, because during the shutdown, getting volunteers to come has not been easy, as I'm sure you all know. So this, as I said, is a labor of love. I'm the old timer. I started in 2002, so I've been working as a volunteer at this park for 20 years. But we have 3 other parks, and we also have something wonderful at Keystone Park. The tribute to the Vaughn brothers. I don't know if you realize that Stevie Ray Vaughan grew up a block from Keystone Park. That's where he played when he was a kid, and he and his brother grew up there. And so that was funded and constructed and inaugurated last year. There were hundreds of people. It was an absolute mob scene when they inaugurated this monument to these 2 wonderful local musicians. We have a lot of fun things going on in Oak Cliff, and I invite you to come. We list our work days on the Master Gardener calendar, and we'd love for you to come. very few master gardeners are participating other than the people who live in Oak Cliff. Oak Cliff is a great place. I would invite you to come because you'll be glad you did. We have a lot of Hispanic neighbors, and it would be very helpful to have someone who speaks Spanish come down and help us. Thank you very much. Come and play. We want. Oh, the master of the Oak Cliff, Friends of Oak Cliff Parks, we're having our quarterly meeting Tuesday night at Kid Springs Recreation Center. The speaker will be C.A. Hiscock, who's going to talk to us about Oriental Gardens. We've just started the project to reestablish the Japanese, to do a lot of work on the Japanese garden in Springs Park. So this is a monumental thing. We've been trying to get that done for years. This is part of the 2017 bond package. I've talked too long. The lady, the mistress of ceremonies is looking at her clock. I think she was trying to.
Actually, Barbara, I have to tap my watch to see the time. So I just wanted to mention that they also have another wonderful park, like Cliff Park, and we a couple of years ago nominated them for the Texas Master Gardener Association Award for Excellence for the Abelia beds that they did, because they, like Keys, they had gorgeous rose gardens that succumbed to rose rosette. And by planting Abelia, they planted a very drought tolerant, disease resistant pollinator plant, and to show the community how you can move forward, because as we all know, rose rosette's epicenter is right here in North Texas. Yes. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is our plant and seed giveaway. It is one of the highlights of going to Master Gardener School, where Master Gardeners share plants and seeds with the new class. And here to talk about it are Beverly Mary and Jan Larson.
Wow, it's wonderful to see all of us together again. I don't know about you. Okay, I'm Beverly and this is Jan. We are co-conspirators in one of the more joyous events of the year, and that is making sure that the class of 22, and welcome our 2 students, will have on Monday a wonderful opportunity to walk through during their breaks and at lunchtime and choose and have as many plants, seeds, bulbs as we can offer them. So, as you're seeing the slide up here, it was on the website. I hope it hasn't caught you by surprise. This weekend, the Saturday and Sunday between 8 and 5, we're opening our front porches for you to just drop by anything you have that you would like to donate. There are 49 students. Some of them are teachers, and they'll be getting the gifts of plant seeds and bulbs at another time, but they'll get them as well. And we would like to have all of the plant seeds and bulbs labeled as to some shade, how large they get and mature, and whether they're, water requirements, as much information as you can get. For many of our students, they may know a lot. As you and I know as students, we thought we knew a whole lot. And I learned how little I knew. So, but this is an opportunity to get your hands dirty and start using some of the knowledge they're gaining. What have I left out? Oh, our addresses. I'm about 5 minutes from here on Meadowdale and Midway at the corner. And Jan's home is on Chapel Hill Road, 75214. You can call us if you really are in dire straits. We'll make an effort to get those seeds or plants, just because this is an important giveaway and gets our students ready and going into what we all do, to love, serve, and educate. So please, I hope you have some things for us. We don't know how many we're gonna have, but we're gonna get them to them. And, you know, if you wanted to come out, I don't know, it's so happy. It's just so happy. They go, wow, this is free. Wow, like, what do you do with that? What is that? And so it's a great joy to do. So help us out, please.
This weekend.
This weekend.